Today we should definitely talk about your new compilation, Watch the Closing Doors, History of New York's Musical Melting Pot.
Right.
Illustrated by you as well.
Yes.
And it's a pretty immersive pain. It's like a love letter to New York, really, isn't it? To a certain degree.
And I'm actually, that is such a brilliant way of describing it. I've never really thought of that, but it is. Everyone I speak to who has lived in New York for a period of time was going on about how it's disappearing. You know, it's like the vanishing city. It's turning into another place. The buildings are the same, like in the East Village and the West Village mainly, but the funk and the edge is disappearing. I lived there in the 80s when it was a bit more, a bit safer than the previous decade, when it was kind of like the lost world, you know. It was lawless kind of bomb site, a lot of it, and the Mayor Giuliani and his zero tolerance campaign made it very safe, which is great because I got mugged, and that side I appreciate, but community-wise, artistic-wise, places for bands to play and rehearse, they're disappearing.
So where did you live initially when you first moved to New York? That was 83, is that right?
Well, I first went there in 83.
Right.
And stayed at a variety of places, and I went back, and at the time London was dead. Acid House had not happened.
Right.
London was all rare groove and shoegazing, you know, it was not an exciting place. New York in the 80s was, from the radio stations, you know, the continuous master mixes on Kiss FM and WBLS. You could feel the electricity when you were walking down the street, and I thought, well, this is great. And then I saw Suicide at CBGB's, and I thought, that, you know, it beats the Bull and Gate with some, you know, indie band, you know. So I stayed, and I lived in 437 East 12th Street, which was once called the Poets Building, and Allen Ginsberg lived downstairs.
Right.
And Arthur Russell upstairs.
Really?
Although I didn't find that out for years afterwards. Arthur Russell back then was below underground. You know, he was he's one of those figures that emerged later. I knew about him, but I had no idea that sweet guy on the stairs who'd give me a smile every morning was him. You know, and Richard Hell was my next door neighbour, just across the landing. So,
oh Lord, it's like kind of like a cultural landmark centre for living, isn't it?
Yeah, and you could walk down the street and Joey Ramone would be on the opposite side of the road, right? You know, it was, that's the sense of community that I'm on about. You could go to any old club. I mean, I'd go to a bar called it was WGAF, it stands for Who Gives a Fuck. And Alan Vega would be standing at the bar, and I'd talk to him. Then I'd go around the corner to CBGB's, and I might go, you know, it'd go on, and it was exciting, and there was loads of really good music coming out.
What did they make of you as an Englishman in New York?
It saved my bacon a few times. I mean, I must admit, after I've been there a couple of years, I fell into the dark side of life there. It wasn't much better in London because I'd been hanging about with like Nick Cave and Jeffrey Lee Pierce.
Right.
And really good influences like that, you know. And I went to New York, and I was seeing Johnny Thunders and people like that, and I got sucked into that kind of thing, and before I knew it I was on, you know, Avenue C at 4 a.m, looking around for certain things, and I was going into places that you would never, if I'd been in my right mind.
Yeah.
If you'd seen them on the TV, you think, no. But I got through, first of all, my accent, because
confusion technique.
The heaviest dealer from Miami was, hey, you're Australian, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And just the way I looked, because back then I looked, I had a lot more hair, it was all out there, and you know, just looked weird, and I was like the weird English guy who'd sort of come along. And it can be the cruelest, hardest place in the world. You know, I had to ride around on the subway once when I got thrown out of my house, and, you know. But you see all these sides, and all the time there's some music coming out of somewhere, whether it's mean hip-hop, when you're in the meanest place, or the highest high when you're in the disco, because I went to the Paradise Garage. And
now I know this is something that His Sound viewers would be desperate to hear about.
Yeah.
So you were involved, and you did see that side of life.
The clubs were brilliant. I only went to Studio 54 once, but I wasn't that bothered. I went to the Red Zone and, you know, the Wild Pitch parties. DJ Pierre took me to one of those. I went to the Paradise Garage. That is a bit hazy. It was about 5 in the morning after I'd been to about 3 others. But I heard Larry LeBand play The Clash, and the place, and demolished the place, you know.
But Magnificent Dance.
No, it was Rock the Casbah, actually.
Oh, right.
But I know the Magnificent Dance was the big. That was the one that Mick heard when he went over, because he came back to London. He was going, they're playing our record, and they're playing it on the radio, and they put Donald Duck on the top and all this Bugs Bunny. And the radio soundtracked like the whole day. I mean, you could hear a master mix at noon. You know, you could WKTU at 12 o'clock every day. This guy called Paco, he would be doing these audacious things that you normally heard at 4 in the morning, not noon. My favourite club was Save the Robots. Which
And
was,
what was that about?
it was an after hours. It was on Avenue B and 2nd Street, right over the road from probably the longest running heroin den. It was like,
Yeah,
and
no coincidence.
it was mad, you know. It was. I came out there like 10 in the morning, you know, and they were playing like these. Outside was like a derelict, with bums and junkies and weird, sinister people, but inside was like disco heaven. It was incredible, you know. And that sort of thing, even though it was difficult, edgy, dangerous, it added to the music, because you'd walk into the place and you'd forget about, you know, what had been going on outside, and I'd forget about all the, you know, the fact that I'd have to go back and ride the subway all night, because that was what they saw in disco, and for someone who hasn't experienced that, it's very hard to explain.